swear you in, whether you are going to be taking an oath or you are going to affirm, it's going to be your choice. And then Mr. July will take you through the paces in light of the submission that you made. And
okay.
Yeah. Advocate man.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, Khaya.
Hi, Njani.
Diyaphila njani?
I'm Con.
Yes. Are you going to take an oath or are you going to affirm?
I can take the oath.
No problem. Mr. Khaya Zondo, do you swear that the evidence you're about to give today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If that is so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much. You've now been sworn in as a participant in the SJN hearings.
Yes, Mr. July.
Yes. Mr. Zondo, there's an affidavit in front of you which is not signed, and we've got a copy as well.
Yes.
When you're taking this oath that you have just taken now, you are incorporating that affidavit as part of the oath that you just took now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so your affidavit has got an introduction, and then I hope you're going to give us more than what you have written there in terms of background. Yes, and then you start by telling us your pro team men's tour, India 2015, and then from there you go to the 5th ODI.
Yes.
And then you go to the report, the CSA report in relation to the India incident. So there you're dealing with finding 1 and finding 3.
Yes.
Yes. So people have testified and said things about how you felt about that. So we want to hear it from you now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I think do you want me to start just a little bit of a background?
Yeah, just a background, your youth days.
Okay. No, well,
very early days. You are still a youth anyway. early days.
I started playing professional cricket when I was 17. Mm-hmm. Played my first game for the Dolphins when I was 17 versus the Titans. That's how my career started. And I've now been playing for, I think, 13 to 14 years professionally. I've played 5 international games for South Africa. So, I think I also didn't want to go so deep into days when I was playing mini cricket and, stuff like that, because I felt I wanted to, just put my story of what happened to me at the protest at the forefront of everything. Yeah. Because I think it's very important.
As long as that story that you are living out is not controversial, because those people who started with their stories right at the beginning is because there's some controversy around that youth. Yeah.
Okay.
Or even too, just for my own edification, I would appreciate, even if you could do it in however short a time, just for us to get a sense of Khaya Zondo, what made him, where you grew up, where you went to school, whether as part of your schooling you played cricket, that kind of thing,
Okay.
And, yes.
Okay, well, I went to Brea West Senior Primary School. I played all the sports there. rugby, cricket, soccer, hockey, athletics, swimming. Some of the guys at SAA level, they don't believe I was the swimming captain. So we always have a joke about that, but I used to swim as well. Then from there, I went to Westville Boys High School. I got a scholarship to go to Westville Boys High School, and I picked rugby, cricket, and soccer to play because I wasn't aware of where I should need to go to register for the other sports. I was very young, and when you get to high school, you don't know how things operate in high school. So I just stuck to those sports because I had my scholarship was for cricket and rugby, and then I picked soccer because it fell in perfectly with the timetable, so it didn't disrupt cricket or rugby. And then so I played under 14 B when I first got to Westville. I played under 14 B team, and I was 13, so I was always a year younger for my age group whenever I played. So I played with guys that are slightly older. I think that helped me because I always was ahead of my age group because I'm playing with older kids. So then I played Westville under 14B my first year. Then the next year I stayed back in the under 14A team for cricket, but in terms of schooling, I went on to grade 9. But they kept me back for my age group when it came to sports. And then I played under 14A where I captained that team, and they sent me to under 15 Natal trials. I then went to the Natal trials. When I was 14, I scored 153 on day one, not out in a one-day game there, and I ended up getting selected for under 15 Natal cricket. I was also selected for under 13 Natal cricket, but there I was selected as a bowler, believe it or not. I was a fast bowler at the age of 13.
Sure.
And then when I got to high school, I used to bowl and bat, and my batting started to take over a bit more, and then I got selected for Natal under 15 as a batsman the first year. And then the next year I got selected again for under 15 because I was 14 when I made it the first year. The next year I was 15. And then when I was 16 at Westville, I then played a couple for under 16 matches. And then I got sent into the first team to play with the under 19s when I was, probably like 16, 15 and a half. And then I played first team, and then I made Natal under 17, and I played there. I think I was vice captain there. Then from then on, I went to Colquick for cricket for 1 year, and I played that. I also played KZN under 19 for I think it was 2 years. I played KZN under 19. I then also got selected for SA under 19, but I ended up not getting a game because the game we were meant to play rained out. So I didn't play, but I was selected for it. I also got selected for the South African under 19 Colts team when we played at Colquick. And then I, just as I finished my matric exams, I got a call to go to training, and I had to go and train. So I went to training, and I ended up playing for the amateur team. I played my first game for the amateur team against Poland at Kingsmead Cricket Stadium in KZN. And then I did well in the one-day game. I did well in the three-day game as well there. And then that was around December or end of the year, October, November, December, somewhere there. And we used to only play 6 games in amateur cricket back then. So there was only 6 games in the year, so it was spread out. And then the next time was I got a call to come through to Dolphins training when I was in 2008 in January, just after New Year's, because there was a game. I think it was just early January, the first game after New Year's, and that's the game where I had debuted for the Dolphins against the Titans. So that's how my professional career, basically, I went through the ranks, and then I got to, then I played for the Dolphins, and then from the Dolphins, I also played for South Africa A. I think I've played for them for a good 5 or 6 years now. I didn't get selected this year to play for that particular team. I then also got selected to play to go into the squad for the national team in 2015 in India. And then maybe 2 or 3 years later, I got selected again for the national team to play against India here in South Africa. And then I got dropped after that, and I got selected to go play again for SAA in India. And then we had to come back, and I got selected to play for South Africa against Zimbabwe. And then that was the last time I represented South Africa. I then had to, now I'm just carrying on as a professional cricketer at the Dolphins in KZN.
Well, we'll come to that at some time. So I think you can now proceed to go through that tour of India in 2015 and do the highlights and take it from there.
Okay. So I had been selected for the South African A side to go to India and that South African A side is the team that's just under the main Proteas team. So it's like a feeder team for them. So you go through the stages. So you've got your professional teams, which are your franchise teams. Then you have your South African A team. And then you have your Proteas national team that everyone sees all the time. The other A teamers, you don't really see it that much. It's a feeder team going into the national team. So I was selected to play for them. We went to India, where then I was there for the one day series. And I did well. I did well on that tour. I was the second leading run scorer behind Quentin de Kock. And then I got selected. Literally, I think it was like 2 weeks later or 2 months. It was in a short space of time though, because the South African A side was in India, and the national team was touring to India straight after that particular team was there. So I think that was also done because to almost gauge as well as who they could possibly select going to India for the national team. So then I got selected for the Proteas straight after that tour. I think because of my performances there. And then I was selected for the T20 squad and for the one-day squad for the national Proteas team. So then I think if you can just highlight just something, I think it's in paragraph 3, where I speak about, I previously been to India with Cricket South Africa, the spin camp. I think a few guys have mentioned the spin camp that week. So they also they used to take batsmen as well, so that we can go and we can learn different conditions and basically know how to play there or get upskilled on how to play spin, because the conditions are different to what we have here in South Africa. So I had done that camp, that spin camp as a batsman. I then also been to India to play the Champions League with the Dolphins. So I think you heard some other guys earlier mention that their professional teams had gone to Champions League. So you go there and you play against the best teams in the world. So you play against the best teams from Australia, from Pakistan, from India, from South Africa as well. I'm not sure if I'm missing any other nations, but basically all the cricket
New Zealand
countries.
New Zealand.
Sorry?
New Zealand would be one of those countries.
I think, I'm not sure if they had a team that was representing them there, but I mean, they are within the cricket space as well.
Yeah.
So they had different groups, so I'm not sure how many nations were involved, but it was basically all the biggest nations that play cricket. So you go there and it's like a World Cup for professional teams.
Yes.
Basically. Yes. Almost like the UEFA Champions League in soccer.
Yes.
So yeah, then I'd gone there. I did really well. Individually, our team, there we had some good individual performances. As a team, we didn't do that well, but myself, I think I did very well. And it was a beautiful experience. It was a beautiful experience. It was different to what we obviously experienced here in South Africa. The crowds are a lot bigger. You test yourself against the best in the world. There's a lot of people you see on TV who are almost like far away in a sense, but then you end up getting the opportunity to play against the best players in the world and test your skill against them. And I had that opportunity, and basically I think that particular tour of the Champions League proved to me that I was good enough to handle myself against the best in the world because I had done well. So yeah, and then that had happened before I went to SAA. So when I went to the SAA on that India tour, I had a good idea of what to expect in India, and I think that is also why I performed on that particular tour. So then after that, I get selected for South Africa. The Proteas, I spent 2 months with the national team in India, and it was a long 2 months, but as a professional cricketer or as an international cricketer, you travel a lot, so you sort of find your ways of how to deal with being away from home. And then we played our T20 series. There was 3 games. The last game had rained out, so we didn't get to play that game. Now, as far as I know, I was meant to play that particular game, but it rained. And I know Mr. Eddie Lee was also on that tour with me. It rained, so we didn't get a chance to play in that particular game. We had won the series 2-0, I think. So then we were going to play. So then we moved off into the one-day series. In the one-day series, where things started to where things happened, basically, I basically, because I was new in the team and I didn't want to, you're there to learn, you're there to, try upskill yourself, you're rubbing shoulders with, people who you can learn from as well. And you ask yourself, you ask for tips here and there and see how you can improve your game and what you can get out of it. I just basically just kept on, training, doing what I need to do, basically waiting for an opportunity should anything happen, or should it come, I must be ready. We get to the first 3 games we didn't change the team. The team wasn't changed. Like I mentioned in the affidavit, the only thing that changed was positions of players. And you know, when you move from under 19 to amateur cricket to professional cricket to South African A-level to international cricket, the roles and the positions you play get a lot more specific skill-wise. So you don't really get many people that can do lots of roles in the team. It's very specialized type positions. That's how usually you'll find, okay, if they need 2 opening batsmen, they'll make sure that these people bat in these positions for their professional teams, you know, and so on and so forth. So it gets very specific the higher you get up, you know, and then, then we, you know, I think when things started to almost like take a bit of a left turn was when one of the players who is traditionally a number 5, number 6 batsman was then taken and made to bat number 1 or number 2. And it was quite a drastic change. It was a bit weird, but it was also, it just made us question, okay, like, you know, why would you do that? And it was also interesting, Ukuti, the player that they took was that they changed that position. It was the player who wasn't performing at the time, and they had you notice that Mr. Eddie Lee had mentioned that there was a player when he got to a certain tour where they were having a meeting for him because he wasn't performing. So it gets to this stage where now you changing players' positions, and it's quite a drastic change. It wasn't like, okay, we'll move from number 5 to number 4. It was from number 5 to number 1, and so that was a bit, you know, it just raised a lot of chats and talks within the team. In that, and they made that change in the 4th game, after obviously a certain player not performing for the first 3 games. Now, why they did that, I don't know. The management or the think tank of the team, people who are entrusted with the tactical decisions would have to answer to that. And I mentioned in my video that while we were sitting on the bench with the other players, one of the senior players who were having a conversation around this, who was white, asked me, so do you think this decision is racist? One of the questions that was asked, another question that was also, going around in the conversation was, so if this player's batting is selected to bat number 5 or number 6 or in the middle order, what happens? Why then does he change his position if he's not performing in his particular position? Why does he go and fulfill someone else's role at number 1, which is a drastic change? First question. The other questions we were busy talking about was, if this guy performs in the position 1 and 2, what then happens when he has to the person that was in position 1 and 2? The person that was in position 1 and 2, do they then lose their spot to this person because he's now suddenly performed? Or does he then move, once he's performed, does he move back? So if he gets 100 batting number 1, does he then move back to number 5, where he has not performed? And then does that fix the problem of him not performing at the time in the position or which he was selected to perform in. That was another question that was asked or we were talking about. And, you know, these questions that were floating around, like the question of, do you think it was racist? It came from a white player who I think we were trying to make cricketing sense of this decision. How does it make sense to do this? So I think for me, when those questions popped up, and it was from a senior player, it started to make me think that, okay, so there's obviously talks around, like, okay, what are we going to do? And it started to raise questions on, are these actually cricketing decisions based on cricket? Or is the cricketing decisions based on friendship, race, or other factors other than cricket? Because we couldn't quite make sense to what's going to happen after this particular game, because it did not make sense to us. But we were not in the decision making, so I mean, they will have their reasons and they'll have to obviously mention whatever that they would mention. Then subsequently, the next game,
Khaya?
the player then moves back to number 5
Sorry,
after
Khaya?
not performing the first 3 games at number.
Sorry, can you
at
hear me?
Sorry?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, no problem. When you look back now, do you think that that change was racist? Changing the player from batting number 5 to batting number 1 in an instance where he wasn't performing. Do you think that it was a racist move?
I think the change, because I was the next batsman in line. I was the next batsman in line. I would have had to replace that particular batsman. So whether they thought of race as a factor, I think they can only answer to that. Do I think it has a racist element to it, or to keep me out the team? I do, my mind does go there. I do think there was an element of Uguti. Hey, now we have to drop this particular player. And if we drop this player, we have to then put in Khaya, because I was the reserve batsman on the tour. So I think that decision definitely sought to keep me out the team. That I can say 100% sure. I think that decision to change roles and do, you know, certain things was definitely for me not to play. Because if the reasoning was for me to play, it was a simple decision like, Khaya, we replace this player with Khaya. You won't go to all those lengths to change positions, to do certain things for a player if you have a player that is on the side and you want to play him. So I don't know if that gives you an understanding of what I think of it. They would have to tell me, or I would have to know, or they would have to explain what their reasonings were for me to be able to gauge or judge exactly what was, or what I would think the motive is. But from where I'm looking from, I believe that it definitely did seek to keep me out the team, because it was a straightforward swap.
Thank you so much. You can proceed. So
then anyway, they moved the player for the 5th game back into the number 5 position after not performing in the number 1 position again. And it didn't make sense, because we had asked ourselves the question of, so he doesn't perform at number 5 or number 5, 6, where he is meant to where he's selected to play, he doesn't perform there, and then you move him, drastic change to number one. Excuse me, when you move him to number one, he then doesn't perform, but then you give him another opportunity back where he didn't perform. So when is it that his performances are not good enough for him for another person to get the opportunity, or for me to get the opportunity? And while all of that is happening, one of the other players, JP Dumini, got injured. He got injured. So there now was 2 spaces in the team which were up for discussion in terms of people who could bat or fulfill those roles. So I was the one batsman that was on tour who was there to replace any batsman that, should it be required. There was one player who was off form, and it got to a stage where they were having meetings for this particular player. They were changing his positions, trying to get him back on form. And then one other player gets injured. So now who was a batsman and bowled a little bit of off spin. So you had 2 positions that were open that they could have played me in or given me the opportunity. So they then moved the one player who was already in the team back to the number 5 position where he wasn't performing. Then they bring in someone else who flew from South Africa to India to then fill the other position. So there's 2 positions or 2 opportunities which they have to select me and put me into the team, but both positions are subsequently filled by two white players. And yeah, I think that's when everything, obviously there was already questions around the intentions of the so-called cricketing decisions that people are making on this particular tour. And it so happened to be one of the most lucrative tours a cricketer can go on when you have the chance to go play in India against India, and people are making such questionable cricketing decisions. It's interesting and raised a lot of questions before within the team, and then now suddenly they fly someone else in to play, and what is it then? So yeah, that's basically what happened. I go in depth in my affidavit, as you can see. So do I think that a lot of the stuff was done to give opportunities to friends? Yes, I do think. I do think that was done because India's a lucrative tour. If you perform on that tour of India, you can showcase your skills, and you have the opportunity to be viewed and seen by the Indian public and the Indian owners in terms of the IPL teams. So there's a lot to gain from it. There was also the opportunity to create history for the South African Proteas national team. So there was a lot to gain for an individual player on that particular tour. So do I think there was race involved? I definitely think there was a racial element involved in the matter. I also think there was also friendships or doing favors for each other type of element involved.
Was it ever explained to you why this was so? I mean, to fly somebody, I think 6 hours across the Indian Ocean to get to India for a match that was due, you are there, whether as a 12th person or whatever, but you are there. you are available and you are on tour because you know a situation had arisen for you to replace whoever was not performing well or whoever would have been injured. Was this explained to you? Why you are not being selected? Because I would have thought it was obvious to anyone who was looking that you are being overlooked when in fact everything else is showing the need to have you being selected into the team in those kinds of circumstances. And was it a coincidence that, you know, the person who gets flown for 8 hours across the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean comes from, is a white player? So, I mean, was it ever explained to you? Or you didn't ask, or if you asked, there was...
So I on the tour, I would, every game that was played, the head coach would call us in and he would explain that you're not playing. That's what would happen to me. So we'd have a quick chat. He would call me in. I mean, I was there, how many games? 1, 2, 3 T20s and 5. So there was about 8 games. So I'd had about 7 interactions, actually 6 of them, 6 interactions where he had said, obviously had to tell me that I was not playing. And then the 7 interactions where I was not playing, because the 7th one where I feel I was meant to play, I still didn't play. And then the one where I was meant to play was the T20 game, the 3rd one, which rained out. So he would explain to me, now, Uti, when the guy was flown in, how Angas, they obviously orchestrated it themselves. All I do know is that you don't get to India on time without the help of other people, especially in the team. There's no way. You're not traveling from Durban to Maritzburg or from Joburg to Pretoria. You need visas. You need your flights booked. You need all sorts of things done. You need to get to the hotel. You need to rest. You need to have all sorts of things done for you to get there on time. So there was definitely something happening behind closed doors that obviously wouldn't get to me because I was still new in the team and I'm not part of management or senior players. But there was definitely something that was happening. And yeah, you can't tell me that something like that happens and it was a spur of the moment thing. It definitely, you're not going from Durban to Maritzburg, and even that on its own needs to be orchestrated by people so that you get there on time.
And there's jet lag to take into account. I mean, a person is not going there on a holiday. A person is going there to play and perform.
Yes. Yes, it does. We do. I mean, I've been on many international tours with the A side and the Proteas team. They do take consideration of that, and they usually do make you rest. And it depends on the medical team and the time zones of the country that you are going to. It's different time zones. I think India is either 4 hours behind or in front of us. I think the time difference is 4.5 hours or something of that nature. So yes, jet lag or rest period or something would be required, maybe a day or something of that nature. Now, what they did, or I don't know. I can't tell you. I mean, it was done all, I'd say, behind closed doors.
In paragraph 13 of your affidavit, you say the player who was flown in from South Africa had no ODI experience. He only had 5 games or less, and his bowling was average.
Yes. So the reason why I put that in my affidavit is because you will see in the article which we're going to speak of, where the national captain commented, and he goes on about he believed that they should be backing experience in this particular game. So my question that I ask myself is, if he's backing experience in ODI cricket in this particular game, why does that not apply to this particular player that was flown in? Because that particular player doesn't have ODI experience himself. So we are one and the same thing per se. I was going to start, he was also just starting off his ODI career. So the difference in experience, he would have to obviously explain or show. I don't know, because cricket, you play different formats. There's T20 cricket, test match cricket, and one-day cricket. So it's separated because people have different skills because of that. So this player in ODI cricket didn't have 20, 30 games, which anyone can say, your experience is so much greater. And you will find, which if you look at his stats, he only has 8 games till to date. And I've got 5 games, which then tells you what the experience-wise now, even in ODI cricketers, say fanele, in a sense.
Khaya?
Yes.
Who was the captain during this game?
It was ABWS.
Okay. And I want to understand, can a captain override like the selector's decision? So like you're saying in paragraph 8, sorry to take you back, that the selector on tour approached you and told you that you would be playing, and this was obviously a day before the game. And then in the morning of the game, the captain then tells you it was his decision that you should not play. So can a captain override the selector's decision?
Well, it happened to me, so he obviously can if he does certain things. But if he does those particular things, then he obviously is doing something that he shouldn't be doing. But on paper, the final decision is taken by the convener of selectors, not the captain. So policy-wise, he should not be able to, how can I put it, to override the decision. What he could do is try convince the person to change his decision. How he does that is also up to the captain. So he could apply pressure in a certain way or manner. And I think you would see in the article, pressure was applied to the selectors to change their decision, because it clearly states, and even the report also states, that I was selected to play, and then my name was subsequently taken off. So how can the selector select me, and then who takes it off? And how was it taken off? Why was it taken off? By whom? And when speaking to the captain, when he was explaining himself, he takes responsibility for the decision and says he also told me that he's the one that felt that I shouldn't play. So what actually happened?
And why do you think that the coach, sort of pulled you aside and told you and explained to you that it wasn't his decision? Was the coach feeling bad, or where was it coming from?
So when the coach called me, it was. I mean, he did that every game. He calls us in. He calls you, tells you, you playing or not playing. I'm guessing. It's almost like when the coach spoke to me, he was almost not in so many words. He was almost like trying to basically pull himself away from what's happening or what happened. Ukuthi nangu umuntu owenze a decision, or nangu umuntu who's influenced this decision to be what it is, as if mhlambe they didn't listen to him, or he was trying to make them see reason what lento that's happening is wrong. I'm not sure, but he it's almost like he distanced himself from. He wasn't part of what was happening. As in, like, maybe they heard, or he was there, he spoke about it, but it's almost like he's showing me, Wuti, this is the person that is responsible. And when the captain spoke to me, he confirmed, because he took responsibility for that particular decision. He did say that he's the one that feels that I shouldn't have played.
All right. And then just the last question from my side. I remember when Roger was testifying last week, it was, where he was, obviously, he was supposed to play in the World Cup, and then the coach had told him that he was not going to play. And I remember he was saying that his immediate reaction was to fight the coach, wanted to fight the coach. So I want to understand from you, what was your immediate reaction when the captain told you that you would not be playing?
So I have it in in my affidavit, and this
That's paragraph 14. If you go to paragraph 14.
It's the captain.
Yeah, so I'll just read it, so I don't miss anything. Okay, so the captain called me over to the side away from the rest of the team and mentioned to me that he was the one who felt I should not play, and was trying to explain himself, and he was taking full responsibility for the decision. I remember in the moment of him explaining himself to me, losing all respect for him as a captain and as someone I looked up to as a cricketing hero of mine, because I could not believe this guy was trying to justify himself to me, and it came across as if I should accept this decision because the decision came from him. It was as if he was given what he wanted and he was told to come and explain to me, or something like that, because he had not explained to me why I had been left out of all the other matches before this one. And now he suddenly felt the need to come and explain why to me. So that was a bit concerning. He'd never...
Where is this?
The coach was the one who'd always come and speak to me. And now suddenly he is the one that's coming to explain. So it also proves or shows, or would he had a massive input in what obviously transpired. And then I go on to say, it did not make sense to me for the captain to take full responsibility of a selection decision when there are people who are employed to do that job, and there is a convener of selectors who CSA employs. It is his duty to take the final decision on selection, not the captain. Personally, I thought no matter what he said, there was no justification for the decision that was taken, and he had accepted responsibility for it. So something was not right, and there was more to it than what I was being told. I remember looking at him and thinking, does this guy really think I had no sense of understanding or intelligence? Or maybe he thinks because I would ask him for betting tips, he thinks that I am a fan, and whatever he says, I will naively accept because of who he is. Because he was really trying to make me understand how it makes sense for another white player who was not in the original ODI squad, but was in the test squad, gets flown from South Africa and was selected straight into the starting 11 of the 5th ODI after I had been with them for 2 months already, and I was in the original squad. I also outperformed this particular player on the SAA tour. So what reasoning was used for him to walk straight into the team? He had no ODI experience. I outperformed him at the SAA tour. He wasn't batting in his specific position. He was batting in positions that should have been filled by, which I specialize in and I still specialize in today. I go on to say the player who was flown in from South Africa had no ODI experience or very little. He only had 5 games or less, and his bowling was average. You can go and look at the scorecard, because one thing that I think they were trying to use as an excuse of selecting is Uguti, this guy, he gave a bowling option. So the captain would say, no, but I might need him to bowl or something of that nature. But the captain didn't bowl him in the game. He didn't let him bowl. It was the captain's decision not to bowl him, so he didn't need him to bowl. So what exactly was it that made him select this guy? Above all else, this player made it on time to play the game, and I must believe that this was not an orchestrated effort, and it was a cricketing decision. In my mind, there is no way that this was a cricketing decision. Someone can come from South Africa to India, make it on time. You outperformed them on the SAA tour a month before, and they get to play. There's another player on tour who's out of form. So there's 2 positions that I could have filled or played. And both those positions, there are cricketing grounds for me not to play. When there are strong cricketing grounds for both those players not to play. So it didn't make sense to me what was going on.
The only sense, to the extent that you can call it, is a sense, or the only coincidence is that both the other players were white and you are a black player. That's the only difference. Yes. Yeah. It has nothing to do with performance, record as at that stage. It all has everything to do with the fact that the other 2 players off form, not having played, not in form, are white cricketers. And you, with all, you are on the tour, you are on form. One cricketer is flown all the way from South Africa.
I don't know how much of a coincidence it would be if they had a relationship with the captain, in terms of friendships or something of that nature as well.
It's not a cricketing decision. Friendship cannot be a cricketing decision. I say friendship cannot be a cricketing decision.
Yeah, it can't be, but that's also, I think, this is something that also clicks in my mind. They're friends, so what then, did that not impact, or is that not something else that needs to also be looked at?
Khaya, why do you keep insisting that they are friends? Just because we obviously want to know what informs that conclusion. Like, is it something you're well aware of? Do you know of the relationship off the field?
Yeah, you would. I mean, in the team, you will see, when you're in the team environment, you'll see who hangs out with who. that's how you sort of pick up that people have a better relationship with others, then, you know, you almost gravitate towards those people.
No problem. You can proceed.
Yes.
So in paragraph 14, I go on to say, to be honest, I switched off mentally for the rest of the day, and I detached myself from the team because it was clear that I was not wanted. Switching off helped me cope with everything that was happening. The hardest part was watching the players who were selected ahead of me playing and having the opportunity to shine and make history for South Africa on a world stage in India, and having the chance to play and potentially impress and get future IPL opportunities as well, off my pain and the opportunity which was meant to come to me. So for me, I think everything was done ukuze I can't replace or come into this particular position because of what was available on tour or the opportunities that arose from this, should someone get it, should someone perform. So it was as if these positions were reserved for certain people. And whatever hell or high water, this guy, Khaya, cannot play, or this opportunity can't go to him. That's what it really came across for people to go to the lengths that they went to. Yeah, so can I just read paragraph 15?
Yes.
Someone had stolen my childhood dream and gave it to someone else. The people who were placed in high positions had failed me and allowed it to happen and continue to fail me because they have not even had the decency to tell me the truth till this day. Only Ashwell Prince has come out on Twitter exposing or mentioning my incident, and I thank him for that. The rest are quiet about what happened on that day, and they still are quiet. So it's quite clear that they have no intention of ever being truthful and open and transparent about what truly happened to my opportunity to play. All of this seeks to protect the person or the people who are responsible for the decision. After the match was done, the ODI players had to leave the same evening, and we had to pack our stuff. And as I was walking out my room, I remember passing one young player at the time who was black, and you're gonna excuse my French, but his words were, "Khaya, I think that it is deep that you did not play." He was expressing how frustrated or how upset he was by using the swear word. Khaya, I think it is bullshit that you did not play. And I acknowledged his words of support, and I kept on moving towards the bus. I then saw the team manager while I was on my way, and the team manager's words were interesting, and they gave me food for thought. He said to me, "Let others fight your battles." Now, I didn't know what this quite meant, but I think he was trying to advise me because he knows the system and what happens should a black person speak out against racism or against certain people. I did later think about this comment, and I came to the conclusion that I could not do that because the people who he might be suggesting I should let fight my battles for me were the very same people placed in high positions who had allowed this incident to happen to me. So I couldn't trust them. When I returned home, I received a WhatsApp message from another player encouraging me and saying he knew I did not get the opportunities on tour, but I must keep moving forward. And it was a message of support, and I thanked him for it. And that was a white senior player in the team who actually sent me that message. And to be honest, I was very surprised. And it was very comforting. It didn't bring back anything, but it was very comforting to know that he supported me in so far as he saw, he was aware of what happened. I want to thank two cricketers and my coaches of the time during 2015 period. The two cricketers, they walked the journey with me. They as we know, black players, if you speak up, then you have the knives and the daggers are ready to be thrown, and people have got guns out for you, so that they want to chop your career short, so that they shut your voice up. These two guys walked the road with me in and out of meetings with CSA for 2 years, and they did not waver. They did not waver. They stood strong with me to the point where we got the report, or the final report, and I want to say thank you to those guys, because they were the only two that were actually willing to stand by me and seeing the wrongdoing. And so thank you to them. I till this day appreciate what they did for me, and I wish and hope that other black players would stand up for each other as they did for me. And I think we would be a lot further as black people in cricket if we stood up for each other and we didn't waver in our beliefs. I also want to say thank you to my coach of the time, Lance Klusner, who he saw how it broke me, what happened to me. He saw, and I think God put him there because he's been at international level. He knows how tough things can get. And he was the right person for me at the time to help me through that. I think if I had a weaker coach who maybe had not experienced how harsh media can be and how harsh things that happen to players there, maybe the outcome would have been different. I might not even be talking to you today as a professional cricketer. But Lance stood his ground. I remember him saying to me, Uzo, now he can speak his Zulu fluently. And he said to me, Khaya uzoqina and izodlula lento, and imisidlulile uzobindoda on the other side. So he stood by me and protected from anyone who possibly would have tried the tactics of shutting Khaya up or let's end his career in one way or another. I'll tell you, the man stood strong. He stood there, and he was there. So I want to say thank you to him and to his management of the time. And also, he created in cricket. I want to say thank you to them as well for supporting me through that time, because it was a massive scandal at the time, or issue, and they were the ones I had to go back home to as a cricketing family. I had to go back to KZN, and they're the ones who stood by me and, they helped me out through that situation and built me up to what I am today, and gave me the opportunity to keep playing cricket. So it's something that I had to say, because it means a lot to me. After we actually came back from that particular tour, and we had, as African players, we had written our grievance letter to CSA, and things were still hot and they were fresh in everyone's minds. People having comments and their own opinions of why this person should not have played, why I shouldn't have played, and they giving all sorts of nonsense justifications for why I shouldn't have played, yet they don't know what was happening. When I came back to play in the professional system, I gave you an example here where we were playing a game in Potchefstroom against the Lions. And while I was batting, there were two white players who, the one was bowling to me, and he then proceeded to have a chirp. He said something along the lines of, "Oh, I hit the ball for 4," and he said to me, "Oh, why didn't you do this for SAA," or something of that nature. So then I had my response to him. Just brushing him off for trying to stay focused. And then he bowled another ball, and I think he beat my batters, and it was a very good ball. And then he said to me, "Oh yeah, if you weren't so focused on writing letters, you might be a better player." And his friend proceeded then to chirp and call me a postman. And in that moment, I lost it. And I remember walking up to them, to the one guy that was bowling, and I was pointing my bat in his face because I just lost it. I'd literally been through one of the hardest thing I think any player can go through, and they have no sort of understanding of what it's like to be in that type of position and make fun about it. And you can clearly see that when they're doing this, for them, they're making fun of the fact that you almost got what you deserved. And that for me it was heartbreaking to then again prove or show that in the system, instead of these guys either not having something to say about the matter if they were unsure, instead they see it fit to comment and belittle and ridicule the experience yami and being discriminated against. They see it fit, they see it to be made a joke, they see it as this is what's meant to happen anyway. So in the moment, I also asked myself, Uguti, if you perform and you're not good enough, and all sorts of so-called cricketing decisions are made or taken that justify or seem to justify that you're not good enough to be selected, what then is it that is required? Because it's not your cricketing ability that's being looked at anymore. What is it that they are? What is it that is enough? Because there's nothing that's enough. What is enough for a black person or a black player to be good enough? There's nothing that's good enough. So it must be something that must be addressed outside of the cricket field, because the very same mindset is what keeps black players off the cricket field and seeks to protect white privilege. So when these players spoke, it was almost like they wanted to carry on breaking me down or beating me down, but no, I wasn't having it. I don't think I'm weak. I wasn't born of a weak father, so it's not in my blood to just lie over and that's it, and that particular season was one of the best seasons I had after that. And it was amazing how uNkulunkulu came through for me in one of the hardest times, because I can tell you for certain there were many people that had written me off, and there were many people who wanted, possibly for even this moment, not to happen, because Khaya must be out the system. We need to justify why he wasn't good enough to play so that no one questions that decision. Uguti, we left him out of the team. So if he's no longer professional and that he can't tell his story from a position of power. 6 years later, I'm a professional cricketer. I made it back into the national squad. I scored a half century against India, who were number 1 in the world at the time. And again, even more of an injustice, I got dropped for performing. I've never heard of a player who's been dropped for scoring a 50 against the number 1 team in the world, when the other guys in the team were not performing on that particular series. So it clearly tells me that speaking up for yourself as a player, the stigma sticks, because you are now challenging the status quo, but you have to. So again, you get dropped and you keep being told to go do it again. So you come into the national team, you're supposed to play. They have reasons why you must not play, unjustifiable reasons. CSA policies are broken, as this report tells you, so that you don't play. They go through all these efforts. 2 years later, you get selected again because you performed. Then again, you score a 50 or you perform. You're the second. I think I was the second in that tour behind Faf du Plessis when India was here in South Africa. I was the second, second in the run scoring or in the averages for the team. And the last game, I scored a half century. I was dropped out the squad completely, and my white peers were kept in the team, in the squad to travel again. So what is it that they're trying to prove? So you keep showing that you are good enough to play. Why not look at it and say, this person had the potential and the ability to score when everyone else was not scoring. But instead, they seek to justify why they should not pick you. So they drop you. Then you get told, go do it again. You go to India, SAA. I go to India. I then score 100 against Australia A. From then on, I move again. They pick me again against Zimbabwe. And the funny thing about that Zimbabwe message came on, and they told me, and I told myself, we mustn't worry about the run rate. Just make sure you finish the game off, because there's a lot of time for us to play. Don't worry about it. And then after listening to the instruction, they then turn around and tell me that my strike rate is an issue. But you told me not to worry about, hey, the way Abam do. You can't send the 12th man on to tell me, relax, don't take any risks, just finish the game off and we win by 6 wickets. And then you then turn around and say, but your strike rate, when you said to me it won't be an issue. But you sent it via the 12th man. But then when we have press conferences or when Khaya is told, no, his strike rate is an issue. So there are many things that are constantly being done. And it almost seems as if it all stems from 2015. Because again, this year, I performed in this season. Now I can't even get into the South African A side. How? How can't I get into the South African A side? They're complaining about not having black batsmen. I was a black batsman who scored 2 centuries in this season. But they can't seem to involve you. No other black batsman scored a century this year. So my question is, why is it about me? What is it about me that they have such a big issue on? So the performances are not enough. What is it? Maybe it's going to be, he's not tall enough. I don't know. So there's all sorts of reasons that are put and things that are keep being done over and over and over. It's almost like they want to seek to say, yeah, when his career is done, you see, he only played 5 games, so he was never good enough anyway. But every single step or level of cricket, I've been able to play and show competence and a level of dominating that particular level. So yeah, that's just my story. I'd actually just like to go through and speak about this article, and I mentioned in or maybe we can speak about the report first.
I was going to suggest before you speak to the report, I think speak to the article. I had thought that it was going to be easy to print this article. It's not, because it's for subscribers. And I happen to be one of the subscribers. So I'll hand it over to, I tried to email it to you, but I think you won't open it because it needs
you must be a
password.
Oh,
Subscriber.
So you can only see the first few paragraphs only. So you can only see like one paragraph at the top.
Because you see now I was busy making a copy. I realize you don't have WhatsApp.
No, I do. Let me just send you a message for the article.
Because I try to copy each paragraph. Maybe in the meantime, Khaya, you can read the parts that you want to read.
Okay. So, this article was done in 2020, and the journalist was Uspusiso Mjikeliso. So it mentions here in the one paragraph, Sports 24 can reveal that Norman Arendse found Zondo's omission from the starting 11 despite being present on the team sheet the night before the game was unfair and was contrary to CSA selection, which is what you have in terms of the report that's been put in front of you. It says here, the Dolphins batsman who later played 5 one-day matches was initially on the team sheet to replace a player in the team lineup, but his name was removed from the starting 11 despite the national selectors picking him to start at Wankhedi Stadium. So that's the first thing, that my name was removed after being selected. How? Who? We obviously need to unpack that. And then it goes on to say, Arendse's report onto CSA, which Sports 24 is in possession of, found that based on the written reports received in relation to the Khaya Zondo matter, it is self-evident that having initially included him in the Proteas 5th ODI 11, he was subsequently excluded. Both his initial exclusion and subsequent exclusion were motivated on what was described as cricketing grounds. What is clearly apparent, however, is that selection protocols and policy were not adhered to. And we find that his exclusion from the 5th ODI Proteas team in Mumbai on the 25th of October 2015 was unfair and was contrary to CSA selection. So, for me, it again speaks to a question which I think for me, sir, you had asked me, does the captain have the right to override selectors? So what happened? Because as you will see in your report, all evidence was kept confidential, even from me being the person who was hurt by the situation. It goes on to say, 3 separate sources involved with VSA at the time told Sports 24 that they were aware of the circulating rumor that the captain threatened not to play. But both the captain and the CEO said no such categorical threat was made. But the captain's emotions were running high. So then, in the captain's word, he's quoted here, when he's asked, did he make this threat? This is the response which the captain gives. That is not exactly true. I did speak to the CEO, who had just arrived in India, and I did tell him I felt we should be backing experience in this game. Emotions were running high, and I remember later being told that one administrator had said they thought I may not be in the right frame of mind to play. That may be the origin of that story. In my mind, there was never any question that I would play in the game. Few people have the opportunity to represent their country on the cricket field, and I have always cherished that privilege. So when he is asked, he says, I'm not sure what it means when he says, that is not exactly true. When he's asked, did he threaten? He doesn't deny it outright. So if it's something that was not true, maybe wording would have been, that is not true at all. Then I asked the question, he says, I did tell him I felt we should be backing experience in this game. My question was, why was this experience not used, or this excuse not used for the player that was flown in?
Yeah. Khaya, there are just two things that I want to ask you, or to
Yes.
put to you. And they are not unrelated. There's a lot of testimony that has come before us. From Ben Malamba and all the other cricketers, where they testified about disparities between black and white cricketers' remunerations for similar positions. And I would like to hear both your views on this, and also whether it was also your experience that you were remunerated as a black cricketer 10 times less than your counterparts for similar positions. The second, not unrelated question, is about the remedial action that was recommended by Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, which is referred to in paragraphs 21 or 22 going forward of your affidavit. Now, I think the remedial action is an apology. And I think you express a view that an apology does not seem to be enough in these circumstances. What would, in your opinion, be something much more opposite, or appropriate, I think that's the word to use, by way of remedial action? And I ask this because originally we had been asked, to consider whether in our report we should not make recommendations for reparations. And I'm not so sure now, when things got reconfigured in terms of the new terms of reference that we have, whether that's part of our brief. But there is nothing that is going to stop us, certainly the Office of the Transformation Ombudsman, in making recommendations. What, in your view, would have been an appropriate remedial action if, as I understand your attitude, Advocate Ntsebeza, remedial action, welcome as it is, in the form of the apology that he expressed, does not go far enough, and that we should consider what would we have to consider that would be approaching something that would be appropriate and or adequate by way of remedial action. And for this, you probably have not sat down to calculate and what have you, but it might assist us in shaping our own thinking to get a sense from you of what, for instance, in monetary terms, you consider you lost as a consequence of being unfairly treated in the way in which Advocate Arendse has seemingly admitted you were.
Okay, so the first question was about remuneration.
Yes.
And black players. I do think I have experienced a situation in cricket where I got offered $200, and I think I was getting paid at the time. I was quite young. I was getting paid about 200,000, somewhere there for the year. Then I got offered 260 by the same union. I then got an offer from another team of 400. And I was accepting that offer. I was happy with it. Then subsequently, that offer, after the CEO spoke, got taken off the table. So now I no longer had the offer. I had to then go back and speak to the other CEO, who then was offering me 260. He then offers me 280. So that is an example of what's happened to me before. I had an offer of 400. He offered me 260. I rejected it. I got an offer of 400. I'm willing to accept. And I had mentioned to the team that I'm going to speak to my coach to let him know, and then but I'm happy to carry on, and I'm happy with this offer. Suddenly, overnight, and they have emails. They have an email where it says, after speaking to the CEO, it is in the best interest of cricket that we retract our offer. I don't know what it means for it to be in the best spirits of cricket. And I had to go back, and I was offered 280. I didn't accept it, but that process that all got sorted out, because that did come to the board at the time. Obviously found out about the situation, and then they remedied everything, and I ended up getting more than the 400. So that was sorted out.
Were you aware how much white cricketers in the same position that you were offered or were being paid by way of remuneration? I ask against the backdrop of us having discovered over the last few days that some cricketers were paid 10 times, some black cricketers were paid 10 times less than their white counterparts.
At the time, I was not aware of what other players were earning. I did have a sort of a knowledge of how much I think was a fair rate for someone of my caliber was meant to earn. So I cannot say to you that I know for sure that, this particular white player was getting 10 times more than me or not. I did not have, I was not privy to that information.
Okay.
So do I think do I think that there are instances where other players get more than others? It's professional sports. Yes, there are instances like that. I think if you were to have to really look at it, I think it's something you would have to request CSA to give you that information so you can scrutinize it or look at it, so that you will be able to gauge. Because also when we are players, you go into a negotiation for your contract, and you might not have an idea of how much you think you should be earning. So you go in there and you speak, and you might accept 500,000, you might accept 7-8 million, whatever, but they might have had more of a budget for you. But it's a negotiation.
Yes.
And yeah, so it's I think that information, I don't know, at the stage, I wouldn't know what someone else would be on, unless if they tell you. So if someone tells you, hey, I'm earning this much, and then you find out, then that's one other way. I do think the people in top positions would be able to give that information, and you'd be able to scrutinize whether black players were being played less or not. I think the information is available, or there are means and ways to find it.
All right, thank you. The related question, of course, is influenced by what you say in paragraph 22 of your affidavit, where you say an apology on its own will not be enough to remedy for the life-changing opportunity that was taken away from me. The report makes no mention of a remedial process. Now, do you have a sense of the kind of damages that you suffered, and over and above an apology, which is a remedial action that was recommended and I think was expressed through Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza? But do you have a sense, and if you have not calculated, you are welcome to take your time and do the calculation. Let us have what you think would be an appropriate, remedial action to take into account the lost opportunities that you had by the unfair treatment which was admitted at the board level through Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza.
I think I have thought about it before, because you sit at home and then you watch the very people that were put in your position get those opportunities and obviously get paid for them as well. So I have given it thoughts. I haven't gone so much in depth to when I've given it thought. I mean, like you can notice how as these opportunities come with so much more than what people think. So I think for me to get to an exact figure, I would have to sit down and calculate and look at all the factors.
I would request you to do that, and let us have that, because we would like to seriously consider whether it is not something that we should incorporate in our recommendations.
Okay. I can definitely do that. I'll sit down, think of it, look at all the factors. It is, we're talking 6 years from when this happened. I was never told the information or the written reports that were given by management. I've got no explanations, nothing. The people the person or people that were responsible carried on in their jobs. They carried on and life carried on, and subsequently it was like, yeah, we wronged this person, but he needs to go because otherwise ithina soba nenkinga. So it didn't make sense to me how everyone else carries on and I don't carry on. And if, it doesn't make sense to me when you look at some of the comments that the captain makes in this article. He mentions at some stage, I believe Khaya to have real potential. And if that was the case for them, it really was about, it was just this one particular game and it was so important. Why then was I not taken on to the next tour and given the next available opportunity? Why then was it not an immediate thing? Because all of it is just, all these excuses are smokes and mirrors, but the whole thing was so that I don't get into the team for a specific reason. And I actually want to find this particular, where he mentions certain things. So, and I just want to give you a sense of how big an opportunity this was, and also what this person, the captain at the time, says. He says, the Proteas had never won an ODI series in India, and as captain on this particular occasion, I believed we should back players with experience. And again, I say to you, the one player didn't have ODI experience, the other one did. So it didn't apply to them. He then goes on and says, at the time, Khaya was a fantastic batsman with a real potential. And I personally told him so. But I did suggest to the selectors that as long as we were complying with CSA guidelines, and we should back experience. It was a cricketing opinion, which had nothing to do with anything else. So he shows you how big the opportunity, he's aware of how big this opportunity and what can come from it and what can just go once after that. He shows you in that statement. He also tells you in the statements of what he saw in me at the time. But again, if the opportunity meets the potential of the player, what could have been? So he played God in this particular situation. And something else that I also want to highlight, just to show something that in this article, when the CEO was asked, so Mr. de Villiers, or the captain, was asked when Indaba Yokuti, what happened when it came to Ian, the rumor that's circulating about him threatening not to play if I played. Now, his response was, that is not exactly true, and then he goes on, as I mentioned earlier, to explain himself. The CEO, then his response is, I don't engage in those conversations. I stop it short immediately, saying I'm not part of the selection panel and cannot be drawn into this. All I do is pick up the phone and reconnect them. I cannot recall the exact details, but I'm sure I would have phoned Mr. Manak, who was there, and asked him to catch up with AB again, who didn't seem satisfied. Then he goes on and says, not to me. He did not say he was wasn't going to play. And in this statement, I think is key. He says, you could perhaps read between the lines, but there was no such statement categorically made. So that is the CEO's response to the question of did this person make the statement? He tells us you could perhaps read between the lines. Then I just want to go on to one more thing, where the selector of the time was contacted for comment and said he preferred not to speak on the matter, and his reasons were he was still the interim Proteas chief selector at the time. So I'm just not sure when the convener of selectors will address an issue of selection if he won't address it while he's the convener or employed to select. So it's something else that I don't know how that can be used as a reasoning. I am the selector, and because I'm the selector, I cannot speak on the matter, but I'm employed to select and to address selection issues.
Well, Pontius Pilate is not only a biblical story of people washing their hands when in fact they should be taking decisions. But we know from those who have read the Bible that at some stage Pontius Pilate said, I wash my hands of this, instead of taking a decision. Look.
And yeah, I think that's my story, and I hope it gives insight to some of the things that are used, or these covert things that are done, covert ways of discriminating or against players of color. And I don't think the Office of the Ombudsman is looking for blatant discrimination and racism. You will find the discrimination in the cricketing reasons or grounds that people give. You will see it in, as others have mentioned, the fitness that people have to do. It cannot, racism after 1994 had to change its face. Could no longer be in your face. It can no longer be blatant. It can no longer be uguti. Here, I'm here. It's no longer allowed. It's frowned upon across the whole world. So I believe, the racism no longer lies in people's face. It lies within reasoning and intentions and how people do certain things. But what you'll always see, or where you'll see it, is that there will be a particular race group that it always gets the short end of the stick. In selection, in pay, in maybe job opportunities, you will see the results in that as well. So I hope this gives insight to how what we go through as professional cricketers, and I hope that me speaking up and speaking to you guys, that others might hear the story, because it came from me, and its essence is not lost, and that if ever others are in the same situation, they can they can be able to pick up the subtle discrimination that is used against players of color, and that it doesn't happen, and people can ensure that it doesn't happen moving forward. And I wanted to say that I do think that the office of the Ombudsman is something that should be permanent in the structures of Cricket South Africa. I believe that it needs to be there as to the short time period you guys have to run your investigations or the submissions is not enough to unpack everything that's happened or to even ensure that it won't happen in future again, because as people are speaking out, which I hope other people speak up about, you'll find that those that don't want transformation to happen will want to get smarter and find other ways in opposing it. And I also just want to say something to the players of color and even to white players, to all the players, is that we are here now in these hearings because of past generations who didn't speak up, who have their reasons for not speaking up while they played, who have their reasons for leaving black players and people of color out of national teams, professional teams. Everyone has their reasons for why they did something, but the past generations put us in this particular position today. And I would like that all players, black, white, colored, Indian, Chinese, green, gold, etc., come out and they speak and they give their opinion, or if they have had any experiences, they speak up, because their silence is also what allows discrimination in cricket to continue. So when a white player sees something wrong and they keep quiet, it allows for it to carry on. And when a black player sees it, he also allows it to carry on. And silence is not the answer. It's not the answer for how we correct this. And this thing affects everyone. And I also just wanted to just state as well something that was quite, that I got told once, is that privilege often makes equality seem like oppression. So that's just something I wanted to put out there, and people can look at themselves and look at the privilege they have. And that when equality must come into place, they need to strip themselves of that privilege so that they can see other people's perspectives.
Yeah, well, it only leaves me to have to say thank you to you for having made yourself available. I say this all the time because it is important for us, and certainly for this process, or for people who have made themselves available to come to this process, to know that we don't take for granted. You have not only taken time, and you have had to leave other tasks, which you obviously, as an adult person, have, but you felt that this was important enough for you to lend your support to it. And that in and of itself gives us the strength to to approach the task that lies ahead of us with renewed strength, because people who experienced that which we have been asked to investigate, namely unfair discrimination on a race and gender basis, have come to say, just listen to us and listen to whoever else, but listen to us, because we are the ones who went through this. If those whom we have implicated or who have mentioned, whether directly or indirectly, as having contributed to our victimhood, have anything to say, they must make themselves available, because the platform is there. And then at the end of it, we would be in a position to make a fair evaluation of what took place. Because in the end, we hope this entire exercise will lead this country to a position where it will heal. And our country needs a lot of healing. The events of the past few days, or in the past few days, yes, and the events of the past few years, even if they amount to about 30 years in the context of cricket between 1991 and 2021, are evidence and testimony to the fact that we still have not got it right. Of course, no society can always or ever get it 100% right. Otherwise, there would be no basis for growth. But it is always the hope of society and its institutions to need or to seek to be better societies today than they were yesterday. And therefore, what we are trying to do here is to shape a future by examining a past and seeing in that past what needed to be corrected. And whilst we are dealing with this thing in the present, we are hoping that we are shaping a future. Many of those who came and made testimonies here emphasized how they would never like to see what happened to them happening to their offsprings. Because I think there's something infectious about the game of cricket. People, some families, everybody was playing cricket. The father, the mother, the son, the daughter. And we need to contribute to the creation of an environment that makes this sporting code called cricket be something that everyone who loves the cricket, the sporting code, to love it more, because they know the environment has since been made, since been cleansed of all facets or all aspects of racism and sexism in the manner in which its functionaries and its players are selected. And we wouldn't have been able to think about those things if we had not been beneficiaries of an input such as yours and others who have graced these proceedings with their testimonies. So I thank you very much. And as we part, may I ask you to look after yourself, wash your hands, sanitize your hands, and keep your what's this thing, social distance, and but above all, may the gods of your ancestors go with you and protect you forever.
No, ngiyabonga, and thank you for having me on in these hearings. I appreciate it, and I hope and pray that they will be successful in achieving what they've been set out to do.
We also
Thank
do.
you.
We are adjourned.